everyone. So in my work with pitch wars and also running writing classes at the library and just, communicating with a lot of authors, talking to a lot of writers, I find a lot of people are confused about standard manuscript format. And so I can tell you what it is, and I'm going to start by telling you what it is, but then also I find a lot of people are confused about how to actually make it happen in their document. So for example, if I say that the manuscript has to be double spaced, they sometimes think that they have to go in and manually put in spaces in every line. And so after I explain what standard manuscript format is, I'm actually going to show you how to do it in Microsoft Word. And I'm going to show you how to do it kind of the longhand way, and then I'm also going to show you how to do it with applying styles, which is it takes a little more know-how, I think, of Microsoft Word, but it is quicker once you get into it. First, you want to start with letter size page. And this might be different in the UK, but in the US, it's 8.5 by 11. It's called letter size, and that's the size page that you need. And then you're going to want to apply 1-inch margins on all sides. So the very first page is going to be your title page. And on your title page is obviously your title, first of all, and your name. And if you write under a pen name, you can write your real name writing as pen name. So mine would say, for example, Sarah Fisk, writing as Sarah Nicolas. You're also going to want to include the word count for the entire manuscript. This sometimes trips people up when they're sending a 50-page sample, for example. The word count should always be the total word count for the entire book, not the word count for the document that you're sending. And then you're going to want to include your contact information. So this at minimum is email address and phone number. You can also put your mailing address on here. That's somewhat of like a old-fashioned practice, I would say, because it comes from when people used to mail their manuscripts in, and then also the responses would get mailed back to them. And so if you don't feel comfortable putting your mailing address on your document, you don't have to if you don't want to. But if you do, I mean, it's kind of expected, but not necessarily required. And the whole title page should be single spaced, but you can put spaces between the different sections. So you're going to want to put your title by your name, and then put an extra space, and then your word count, and then an extra space, and then your contact info. And this page is not page 1. This page is actually page 0, and we're going to talk about that when I show you how to format in a little bit. So you want to start page numbering with the page that is immediately after the title page, and that is either going to be the first page of your first chapter or the first page of your prologue. You should not include a table of contents in a fiction manuscript. Some of these things might be a little different for nonfiction, and so what I'm talking about here specifically is for a fiction manuscript, but will also apply to like narrative nonfiction. Now you want to include a header that goes on each and every page of the document that has your name, your title of your manuscript in all caps, and your page number. And you may also want to include an email address on this header as well. And that's because if the agent or editor loses that first page that has your email address on it, they're still going to be able to find it if they have any of the pages of your manuscript. And you're going to apply this through the header settings in Word. You're not going to do this manually, and we'll show you how to do that in a minute. For the text of your manuscript, you want to use a standard 12-point font. And so these fonts include Times New Roman, Courier, or Arial. Times New Roman is my favorite. It's pretty standard across the industry, but some people do prefer the other two different fonts. Each first line of each paragraph is going to be indented by 1/2 inch. It used to be 5 spaces that you inserted manually. Do not do this. Make sure you insert them via the Word settings. And again, I'm going to show you how to do that. You want to double space the entire text. And so what this looks like is you'll have a line of text, and then you'll have a blank line and a line of text. But again, do not do that manually. Do that via the settings. And don't add any extra spaces between paragraphs, either manually or through the settings. Your document should always be aligned left and never justified. I know it looks like a little messy with the ragged edges on the side, but it can also look really weird if you have, you know, a couple big words and it tries to stretch them out across the whole line. And so always align left, do not justify a manuscript. A lot of people learned to type by putting 2 spaces between a period. That has not been required for a very long time, and in fact is no longer preferred. And so you want to include 1 space after each period. But if you still manually do this and you cannot train yourself out of doing it, I had to train myself out of doing it, but if you're struggling with it, you can actually correct it once you're done when you're formatting, and I'm going to show you that in Word as well. At the end of both the title page and every chapter, you should put a page break in, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the formatting section. And then you want to start each new chapter about a third of the way down the page with the chapter title centered. And you want to make sure to remove that indentation, that first line indentation on the chapter part as well. And then you want to enter a few spaces before you start the actual text of your chapter. That first line of the chapter can be indented or it cannot be indented. It doesn't really matter too much and is kind of like a house preference, but either way is fine. You should indicate scene breaks with a symbol such as the pound sign, and you're going to put an extra line break before and after that pound sign too, so it kind of stands out a little bit. You also want to make sure you are using italics for italicized words. That may seem obvious to some digital natives, but it used to be very common practice to use underlining to indicate italics, but you don't have to do that anymore. Just go ahead and italicize that. Also, for any additional formatting, like, you know, extra formatting, special formatting. So for example, if you want to indicate that a text has been sent or an email or any kind of, you know, signage or anything like that, you can kind of play around with the different formats. Some people make them italic, some people make them a different font, some people put them in brackets. Just kind of see what works for you, and it also depends on how many different things you're using. So the book I'm writing, I only have handwriting. I don't really have text in the book. And so I indicate when they've written notes to each other by putting brackets around it in my manuscript. Now the publisher may change that down the line, but it's fine if you just find some way to indicate that it's just not normal text. And finally, whenever you are sending out a manuscript, you want to send it as a .doc or .docx file. Do not send it as any other kind of file unless you have been specifically requested to. Sometimes people send manuscripts as a PDF, and that makes it very hard for the agent or editor to make notes as they read. So make sure you're sending it in that document, which is the standard Word file type. And this is especially for Apple users. If you're using something else besides Word, it may save it as a different file that's not .doc, but you can actually, if you go to File and Save As, you can make sure that you select .doc or .docx so that the agent can actually open it and read it and make comments on it. All right, now that I have listed out all these things for you, I'm going to show you how to do each of them in Microsoft Word. You may have a slightly different version of Microsoft Word than I do, either an older one or a newer one, and so things might not be exactly in the same place, but the concept is still the same, and you're still probably going to be able to find these same settings if you just look around a little bit. And just for reference, I'm going to be using Microsoft Word 2013. All right, so now I'm going to show you how to do this the manual way. So I have copied the first chapter of Keeping Her Secret, my book, into this document and messed it all up so that we can go back and fix it all. Okay, so the first thing that I mentioned was we want to do 1-inch margins on all sides. As you can see, this is only a 1/2-inch margin, and this is pretty easy to do whenever you go to page layout. There should be margins there. If you're in an older version of Word, this is going to be like less graphic, but it's still going to be all in the menu available to you. All right, and now we're going to create a title page. And what I want to do is I want to start writing. And so this is Keeping Her Secret by Sarah Fisk, writing as Sarah Nicolas. Remember, I mentioned this in the first part of the video. And then we're going to put the word count. I honestly don't remember what the word count of this book was, but we'll say 65,000 words. I know it was a little bit shorter. And then we're going to put our contact info down here. I'm just going to put an extra space there. And so we'll put a phone number, not my phone number. And then an email address. So your name at gmail.com. And then you can also put your address here too, like I mentioned. So I'll just go ahead and type one out. I have no idea what the zip code in New York is, so there we go. All right, and then this is all that should be on your title page basically. And what you want to do in order to create a separate page for this is you want to hit Control Enter. And I forgot to mention I am on a PC. I'm not exactly sure what the command is on a Mac for that, but I'm sure it's similar and you can probably find that pretty easily. And then I want to format it. First thing I'm going to do though, just because this is bothering me, is I'm going to change this font. So this is Comic Sans. I changed it to Comic Sans so that you could tell right away that it was not the right font. So we're going to change to Times New Roman, 12-point font, and yeah, so it doesn't look quite so bad. All right, so I'm just going to format this cover page like I want it to be formatted. So we're going to do a center, and I'm also going to change the paragraph styles. And I'm gonna talk a little bit more about these whenever I format the manuscript itself. Title page should be single spaced, with 0 spacing before paragraphs and 0 spacing after paragraphs, no indentation, and centered, right? And then we can also kind of like push it down the page a little bit so it's kind of like centered on the page. All right, that's the title page, done. And now we're going to go to the body of the manuscript. All right, so the first thing that we're going to want to do is create our header for the rest of our manuscript. And the easiest way to do that is just to put your cursor right here near the top of the page and double click. And that's going to bring up the header and footer menu. If you're on an older version of Word, you may have to go into the menus to find this. I'm not even sure where it is in here, but you will be able to find it. And then what you want to do right away is you want to make sure you click different first page because we don't want that header on the title page. And then we're going to start typing out our header. So last name, put some kind of delineator between your last name and the title. It can be a slash. I like to use this like straight up and down slash just because I think it looks nicer. And then I'm going to put the title, Keeping Her Secret, here. And then, like I mentioned in the intro, you might want to include your email as well for the reasons that I mentioned. And then you can just hit the tab key to get over to the right side. You'll notice that this creates like a link. If you want to make that not happen, just hit Control Z and it will undo creating the link without undoing your tab. And then you're going to go over here to page number and hit current position, and then you can just put in a simple number. So you'll notice that this started at 1 because that's the way that my settings are on my Microsoft Word. And if yours are not set that way, what you want to do is you want to click on page number again, go to format page numbers, and this might be selected, continue from previous selection. And what you're going to want to do is click start at and then change it to 0. And so what that is telling it is that the first page is actually page 0, so that your numbers start numbering on the first page of your manuscript. So the header is created. We said different first page, so there is nothing on the first page. You can do something here, but you don't need to for your manuscript. And then if you notice, if we keep scrolling, you'll see that header continues in the rest of the document, and we'll continue counting the pages automatically. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the paragraph style. So make sure you click off the header, get back to here. So what you want to do is you want to highlight all of the text of your manuscript, and you can do that by scrolling down manually like I'm doing here, or you can hit Control Shift Home My keyboard that I'm using right now doesn't have a home button, so that's why I didn't do it, but you can do that. And we're going to want to change the paragraph settings. And the easiest way that I find to find the paragraph settings is just right click on any of that highlighted text and click paragraph. Now, the alignment, we want it to be left, correct? We didn't want it to be justified. And we're going to do no indentation on the regular text, but we're going to do a special indentation of that first line by 0.5 inches. And you can see here that indents the first line of each of your paragraphs. And then you want to make sure this is selected to 0. The spacing between before and after the paragraph should be 0. And then you can click on line spacing and click double and click OK. And you'll see that has formatted your manuscript as double spaced all of your lines and it has created that first line indent. So you'll notice that it removed the spaces in between the paragraphs that I had before. And you also want to make sure that you don't have any manually inserted spaces like that. And you can't fix those in formatting. You're going to have to go and do that yourself. The other thing that we talked about is putting 2 spaces after a period. So when I copied this into this document, I put 2 spaces in between periods in the last 2 paragraphs. You can kind of see the difference. You see how there's a big space there. If, like I said, you haven't been able to train yourself out of doing this, it's very easy to fix. And the way that you're going to do this is you're going to hit Control F, and it will pull up this panel here if it's not already pulled up. Mine was already pulled up, so it didn't change anything. You click on this little arrow right here, not the search bar, the little arrow, and go to Advanced Find. And what you're going to want to do here is click on the Replace tab, and you're just going to type in 2 spaces, just like that, very easy. And then you're going to want to hit 1 space there, and just go ahead and click Replace All. And you'll see it made 6 replacements because that's how many double spaces I put in. If this is a full-length manuscript, you're going to see a lot more. And since we're in the search function, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead and talk about turning underlined words into italic words. So if you've already underlined the words that are supposed to be italic in the book itself, it's very easy to change all of them at once. Okay, so you see that we have this text here that is underlined and should be italicized. And the way that we fix this throughout the entire document, every time it occurs in the document, we can do it all in one fell swoop. We go back to Advanced Find again, and we go to Replace. And you want to make sure you're removing those spaces that you searched for earlier so there's no text in those boxes. By the way, if you go to Advanced Find and it looks like this, which it may look like if you haven't used the More before, you just go ahead and click on More so you can find the rest of this menu. I should have mentioned that earlier. I'm sorry. And so you put your cursor in the Find What document, click on Format, and click on Font. And you want to go to Underline Style and click Words Only. And so what that's going to do is it's going to find every instance in the book where you have underlined words. And then put your cursor in Replace With and go back to Format and Font. And you want to change it to italicize words, but you also want it to remove the underlining. And so you go back to Underline and click on None and make sure it says None. So it's going to find words that are underlined and replace them with the same words that are italicized but do not have an underline. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to click here and click Find Next. It will show me the next option. So I have this word trying that should be italicized, and I'm going to hit Replace. And you'll see that it's changed it to italics and it's removed the underlining. Now I can just do it with all of them in one fell swoop by clicking on Replace All. They made 10 replacements and that is done. Now we just started working on the formatting of this, but we want to go back to the beginning of our chapter and make sure it looks the way that we planned for it to look. So this is the title page. So we're going to go back down here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to make that go about a third of the way down the page. And what you can do here is, like I mentioned, you can change the tabbing by moving this right here, but you don't have to. It's up to you. It's kind of a style choice. So just kind of click somewhere. Honestly, it's not really a science at this point. And you type chapter 1. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight just that text and center it, and also remove that first line indent by dragging that over. And so it's centered nicely on the page. And then if I want to go to chapter 2, I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, find the last line, and again hit Control Enter for that page break. And then I'm going to go a little bit down the page, type about chapter 2, and then start typing the next chapter. And I can do that formatting again, where I highlight just the words chapter 2, center it, and remove that first line just for the highlighted section. So the first chapter of Keeping a Secret is in 2 different POVs, so we do have a scene switch over. And I'm going to scroll until I can find it. So here I have used 3 asterisks to indicate the scene change, and I also want to set it off a little bit by doing an extra enter between these, so you can kind of see it better whenever you're scrolling along, or whenever you're reading, you can see, that the chapter ends there. And I wouldn't worry too much about the formatting of this, because whenever the publisher formats the book, they're probably going to put in some kind of graphic or some special thing here. So anything that just shows that it switches scenes without looking like a chapter change, that's going to work. So it doesn't matter too much what this looks like or what exactly it is. So that is pretty much it for the formatting. Now what you're going to do is save as a doc. All right, so this document is saved, and now I'm going to show you, now that you've done all this work, you don't have to do this work again. So let me show you how you can do that. So just go ahead and highlight some of your formatted text. And while you're on the Home tab here, this is a style, I forget what they're called, style something. Yeah, styles. Okay, there you go. And so you can just click on Create a Style. And we're going to call this Scene Text, because that's what it is. And go ahead and click on Modify, and you can see all the settings. So you can see font Times New Roman 12 point first line, indented by 5 inches, or half an inch. Line spacing, double space, 0 space after a paragraph. Based on normal, that's not really important there. But if you wanted to change any of this, you can do some of it here. So this changes the alignment, and this changes the spacing, and this changes the space before and after a paragraph, and this changes the indent. What this can't do is change the first line indent. So you can go even more into detail by clicking on Format, and you can change all the different things, font, paragraph, all that kind of stuff. So you can go over to paragraph and you can change that first line if you want. So this is all set. We have this labeled as scene text, and it is good to go. So we have now this new style called scene text. And then what you can also do is scroll back up to your chapter, which is also going to be the same formatting as your title page. So you can use this for both, and just highlight just those words there and click on Create a Style and call this Chapter Headings. Okay, so I've gone ahead and messed all of the formatting up again after we've created these styles. And so if you are drafting, you can go ahead and just draft in this format. But if you've drafted in a different format and you're trying to format it before sending it off to someone, what I would do is just go ahead and Control All, select all of the text in the document, and change it to scene text, just like that. And then you can go back to your sections that you want to look like chapter headers and just change those, because that's a little bit easier than changing it chapter by chapter. And you can go ahead and do that with your title page too. Because like I said, that's easier than going chapter by chapter and changing the scene text and changing the chapter text and changing the scene text and chapter headings and back and forth. And then you can go down to your chapter 2 and change just the chapter headings to that style. And so once you've done all this formatting work, if you save it as a style, there's no reason to do it all again. You can mess with the different styles and do all kinds of things with them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you format your manuscript. I hope this helped clear some things up for you. Please let me know if you have any questions by leaving a comment down below, and I will make sure to answer them. And I will see you next time.